Hi guys, Dave Pinson here, Philippine Bible Ministry. I want to talk a little bit more about cults, C-U-L-T-S, not a cult. I notice sometimes all my videos you could caption them and you can read them because I do that sometimes because I like to make sure that I'm saying right things, and then sometimes I'll take them down or redo them. And I notice that sometimes the captions, they don't say the words right. They don't print the words. So when I say cult, a cult, it'll say cult. And when I say whatever. So I want to talk a little bit about cults today because there's a lot of cults in the Philippines, which where I am, and a lot of people that don't know their scripture are easily led into cults, especially by lying signs and miracles are different than the other. And I just hit a verse this morning as I'm reading through the Bible again, and it was in 2 Kings 17. Hang on. 2 Kings 17:33. They feared God, yet they served their own gods. And this brought up the idea about cults to me. Why is that? So just to put that into context there in 2 Kings, it's talking about when the kingdom of Israel was destroyed, when the Assyrians, because when the kingdom split, Solomon was a terrible king. He's the worst king. A lot of times when you think, who's the greatest king? That's the other thing occurred to me this morning. Because I was reading through scripture. Who's the greatest king in the history of Israel? Besides Jesus, you know. But who's the greatest king? And most people will say, well, Solomon was the greatest king. Look at Solomon had all this stuff. Look at all the stuff Solomon had. Solomon's the greatest king. He's a wealthy, wise, you know, and he built the temples. I mean, Solomon, right? No, Solomon's the worst king. Why? Because he had all the wealth. He was the most worldly king. He fits today's modern structure of what is a successful pastor. He look at it. Oh man, look at it. Look at this. He's got 70,000 people watching his video. A million people. He's got a million people watching his videos, and he's got 6,000. He's got 15,000 people a week that he preaches in front of. This guy, he's the guy, right? Except for one thing, Solomon turned towards God and built and put little babies through the fire of Molech and built all these temples to the demons. And so God destroyed the kingdoms. He says, "Look, I'm gonna split the kingdom from you because you've sinned." And we don't have anywhere in Scripture that it says. And then Solomon repented and God forgave him. That's not in the Scripture, so it's all a guess. At the very end of Ecclesiastes, he says something about the preacher, and I like to hang on to that and say, well, oh, you hear the rain? I don't know if you can hear that. It's raining really hard right here. It rains in the Philippines. Hope we don't lose our power. Anyway, so Josiah, it says that Josiah was the greatest king. It says that's where this came up. It says, and there was never a king like Josiah. It's like, well, Josiah's the greatest king, not one that nobody talks about. Anyway, so back in those days, when Israel was taken out by the Assyrians, and then it says, but then God stirred up the people, and he caused all kinds of chaos, and because the people were had all these false gods in there. And so the Assyrians said, because they didn't do like the Babylonians left people in Judah when they took over the kingdom of Judah. They just took everybody out. And they just put in a bunch of other people. And those other people are serving false gods. And by the way, the false gods are demons. They're demonic. It says in there, worshiping to demons many times. It's an evil thing, the things they do. It's not just like, well, all religions lead to God. No, all religions lead to the devil unless it's Jesus Christ, brother. Pay attention. So anyway, they were serving these false gods, and so the governor says, "Why don't we bring in one of the priests? Find a priest somewhere, because where you took them, they took them all over the place. It was a mini diaspora. In other words, they were scattered everywhere. The 10 tribes. Anyway, that's another story. So he goes, find a priest and bring him here, and he can teach them. And they did. They found a priest. It was a priest. It wasn't. It was, and they brought him there, and he was teaching them. Well, this is how we serve God. So he built an altar, and he started teaching them to serve God. And it says, and they feared God, and yet they served the demon gods. What does that have to do with anything? Well, that's the way the cults. That's the way many of the cults are. That's what got me thinking. That's the way many of the cults are. So I think about the Eclio cult, which I'm not afraid to name anymore. I used to be afraid because we have very close I don't want to say who. We have people very close to me. I could walk outside, throw a rock, and hit their house, who believe in this demonic person who's long gone. And yet they also believe in Jesus. So they also believe in Jesus. They say prayers to Jesus. Most of them go to the Roman Church, so they'll do and they'll go to the Roman Church. But most of them are not the ones I know. They're not. They don't go to church. They're not regular church attenders. So even the Roman Church would deny that they're true members of that church. They're just in name only, but they believe in it, right? In a way you would say they fear God. They believe in Jesus, but they also believe in Eclio, or they also believe in Kubeloy, or they also believe in whoever else, Joseph Smith in the U.S., or Moroni. They also believe in whatever. You pick your poison, brother. And so what is that? It's the same as back there. So they were always unstable. So that's why the Samaritans were hated by the Jews. When the Jews came back later on, after the captivity, when the Jews came back, Ezra and I forgot all the names. I know the names, but I don't want to wait for my mind to glitch and bring back the memory of the names. But when they came back and built another temple, they hated the Sumerians because the Sumerians were a few Jews were left. The priest probably brought his family. There was a few, but there were also all these other pagan people who made a new race of people called the Sumerians, and they had this whatever that priest taught them. They had that, but they also had some pagan stuff going. So they feared the Lord, but yet they followed other gods, right? Which is a cult thing. It's 100% a cult thing here. They fear Jesus, but yet they follow the divine one. They follow the divine master, and they say these fake Latin prayers that are demonic, and they have this. It's almost like a witchcraft. If you looked at it, you didn't know what it was, and you didn't know the language or anything. You just saw what they were doing. You would say, well, that looks a lot like it is. It's paganism. And also one other thing before I'm done here. Not much to say about it. Just that thought came up to me, and it's good to know your enemy. If because God's going to destroy. By the way, I'm going to give you now. I'm not a prophet, not in the sense of the word in the Old Testament style, or even the Old Testament style. I'm not prophesying what's going to happen, but I do believe that the Lord is going to take Kamai and going to destroy the cult here. It's going to happen. So all those people that I'm telling you about that are following this guy in their hearts, God's gonna hopefully through our ministry or whatever, through the love of Christ, He's going to bring. And this is what's going to happen. So mark my word. And when it happens, maybe I'll repost this video and say, "See, I told you. Look, we just got salvation over in this house. We just got salvation over in this house." So anyway, that's what they do. They try to serve two gods, but it also reminds me of the world. So one more thing, I'll close with this. It says in the scripture, you cannot serve the Lord and mammon. In other words, you can't be a worldly Christian. A lot of people try. There's a lot of some of those famous Solomon type style, famous guys, the famous wealthy pastors that they're serving the world and God. They're not denying themselves. And a lot of the prosperity people are telling you, you get whatever you want. And I think most of the mega churches, for me, most of the mega churches fall into that disgusting thing. So what are they doing? They say they fear God. So what it really means, it doesn't mean that they fear God, because if they fear God, they wouldn't do it. It's a verbiage used to mean that with their tongue. It says that also in Scripture. With your tongue, you say you believe in God, but you deny Him with your life. So what? And that's what a lot of Christians do. With their tongue, you say, "I'm a Christian, I do this," but yet they still are involved in all that sin, and it's unrepentant. It's not just that. I'm not saying that. Well, they're not perfect. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that whatever they're doing, they don't think about it because they're really not serving God. Because they're really serving themselves. This is my house. This is my stuff. This is my. I want more and more. America first, and then we'll just be wealthy and we'll take whatever we want or whatever. So in the book of Romans, I'll close with that. I said I'll close with this. I'll close with the book of Romans says everyone knows there's a God because of the creation. I'm summarizing. Everyone knows there's a God because of the creation, but because they refused to seek that God, then he gave their mind over to darkness, and some of them became homosexuals. The men with the men. This is what it says in Romans 1. Check it out. It's very powerful stuff. Amazing. The men with the men and the women with the women. Some of them, their hearts became dark because they didn't really seek God. Right? And then it also says, and some of them worshipped all kinds. They made these things that they worshipped the birds. They worshipped creation instead of the Creator. And then it says, and some of them worship mankind, and that's the thing, isn't that the thing? You know, all these guys, these. I just saw some pastor guy from Africa was talking about how you can use your mind to create wealth, and he's supposed to be a pastor, and that's all demonic to me. That's serving other gods. You're serving the God of this world instead of saying, "Well, that'd be nice if God blessed me in that way, and maybe I could." But the focus of my life is to follow Jesus, guys. So if you fear God, then you obey God, and you'll turn away from all that stuff. You'll turn away from all that stuff, and pray that we do. Hey, God bless you guys. Ta-ta for